Hello everybody and welcome to another uncanny episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for an amount of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below, along with other places you can find me. And thanks to the patrons, this week we are looking at one of the most feared alien species in the known universe, the Brood. A ruthlessly savage insectoid race, each individual brood possesses armored skin and razor-sharp teeth. Of their 6 limbs, their 2 forelegs are longer than the others and can be used as prehensile tentacles. Additionally, each broodling typically has transparent wings and a long tail that splits into 2 venomous stingers. Driven primarily by hunger and an instinctual need to procreate, some consider the Brood to be the universe's first natural predators, while others regard them as a cancer on the cosmos. Despite all of that, they're not mindless and in fact possess considerable collective intelligence, as well as the capacity for speech. It is indeed possible for individual broodlings to be born with the capacity for kindness and compassion, but those exhibiting such traits are usually killed by the others. Parasitic by nature, the Brood's primary method of reproduction is through infecting members of other races. When a brood egg is implanted into another organism, the embryo within metamorphosizes the host's body until the egg hatches. At that point, the infected organism is completely consumed and transformed into a new broodling. Furthermore, the resulting brood inherits memories and abilities from their host, and so they often prioritize infecting powerful individuals. There have even been examples of brood that were able to mimic the original bodies of their host organism as a form of disguise. The behavior of infected individuals can be affected by the embryo within them, with their minds usually being completely supplanted by the time they display outward signs of metamorphosis. At that point, they are added into the brood caste system, a hive structure that exists under an absolute matriarchy. The most common form of brood are drones, sometimes referred colloquially as sleazoids. 8 feet long on average, these worker brood exist only to serve the will of their matriarch. Each brood hive is ruled by a queen that produces the eggs, which are then implanted into other beings. Queens are generally larger and stronger than drones and have the ability to project a paralytic liquid from their mouths. There are also female brood who are capable of producing eggs, but closer to drones in size and strength. These are referred to as dwarf queens, and in the caste system are considered superior to drones but still fall beneath the larger queens. However, the most powerful brood, who sits at the top of the matriarchy and controls every hive in the universe through a combination of pheromones and telepathic dominance, is the brood Empress, also known as the Mother of all Mothers. Residing on a central nest world, seemingly unable to move from her perch, the Empress is capable of asexually producing eggs that hatch without the need for a host body. This allows the Empress to surround herself with an elite militaristic class called Firstborn, each of which is even larger and stronger than a standard queen. These Firstborn are easily recognizable due to the green pigmentation of their skin and the bony armored plates that cover parts of their bodies, including sharp claws and a single tail stinger. They will naturally defend the Empress at all costs, for if an Empress dies, her Firstborn will perish with her. When this happens, rival queens compete to assume the position of Empress, resulting in a nest war that usually lasts several decades. The Empress would also select from her queens one to serve as her representative on other worlds. This specific queen would then gain the title Imperatrix and would also be referred to as the Great Mother. So to recap, at the top of the matriarchal hierarchy we have a single Empress, directly under her is the Firstborn, then we have the Queens, the Dwarf Queens, and finally the Drones. Now, where the Brood originally came from is largely shrouded in mystery, with some sources claiming they first emerged from a dark galaxy. At present, the earliest reported Brood sighting was circa 1 million BC, when a queen appeared on Earth and confronted a prehistoric predecessor to the modern-day Black Panther. As you may well know, in the distant past, a meteor composed of the alien metal vibranium struck the Earth, coming to a rest in what would become the African nation of Wakanda. It's been theorized by modern Wakandan scientists that on its journey through space, the meteor would have absorbed cosmic energy that warped space-time and opened portals to other locations, and so this particular brood could have come from virtually anywhere. In any event, that queen was quickly slain before it could procreate and spread. Now, according to another alien race, the Kree, it seems that the Brood are actually extra-universal in origin, having entered the reality we know through the dark matter flow of a collapsing universe. This was discovered roughly 8,000 years ago by Kree xenotomologists who found the Brood spawning in one such dark matter flow. Upon closer study, it was determined that the Brood may actually have been manufactured, but of course, since their universe of origin had already collapsed by that point, even this remains unconfirmed and potentially unconfirmable. Regardless, it was evidently the Kree who unleashed the Brood into the Shi'ar galaxy as a way of testing their viability as a weapon. Whether or not that was really when their incursion into the universe first began, at some point the Brood did begin spreading across the cosmos, including the Milky Way, establishing hundreds of nests on as many worlds. One of their earliest known conflicts was against a now extinct warrior race called the Eidolon, who clad themselves in intelligent armored body sheaths known as warwear. Meanwhile, after several hundred years of testing and design, the Black Judges, a secret science wing of the Kree Accusers, developed a method of seizing control of the Brood, at least temporarily. Referred to as the King Egg, this object contained a serum that could effectively overrule the Brood caste system by endowing its host with a supercharged version of the Empress pheromones. The Kree determined that the best time to use the egg was just after the death of an Empress, before the ensuing nest wars reduced the overall population. But at some point in the intervening centuries, while the Kree waited for this opportunity, the King Egg was stolen by the Shi'ar, who sealed it away on the edge of the galaxy. Now, despite their monstrous appearance and savage nature, the Brood do possess advanced technology, particularly in the field of bioengineering, which allowed them to develop a mind virus that could be used to enslave other species. Speaking of which, for the next part of our story, let's introduce another race, the Acanti. Averaging 5 miles long and weighing approximately 200 million tons each, the whale-like Acanti were one of the first, if not the first, sentient species to evolve in the Marvel Universe. Able to survive in the vacuum of space and travel at warp speeds, these massive, pacifistic animals wandered the universe seeking knowledge and serenading the stars with songs composed of tachyon patterns. Their leader was known as the Prophet Singer, and carried within him the soul of their entire race. Traditionally, when an Acanti dies, they allow their bodies to be consumed by the heat of a star, which in the case of a Prophet Singer releases the racial soul and allows it to be passed on to his successor. But then, untold ages ago, the Acanti were discovered by the Brood, who infected the Prophet Singer with their slaver virus. The other Acanti were unable to abandon their leader even as he was lobotomized and transformed into a living starship. The Brood also used the Acanti as a source of food, feeding on their flesh even while using them to travel between star systems and galaxies. When the Prophet Singer finally died, the Brood crashed his body onto a nearby planet, preventing his soul from passing on to his successor. From the decaying corpse, they built a throne city which served as the starting point for that planet's infestation. Over the following centuries, that planet served as their new homeworld, and thus became known as Brood World, but has also been referred to as Sleaze World. In that time, the Brood continued to use members of the Acanti race as living starships, but this would not be the only sentient spacefaring species to be enslaved by them. Notably, the Brood have also utilized star sharks, outfitting them with weapons and technology so they could be used as attack fighters in planetary assaults. As an interesting side note, the Leviathans used as living warships by the Chitauri are not naturally occurring creatures, but biomechanically engineered Acanti star shark hybrids. But back to the topic at hand, the earliest confirmed Brood invasion on Earth occurred in ancient Egypt circa 2620 BC. This time they were opposed by a man named Imhotep, who allied with other warriors including the immortal mutant Apocalypse and that era's Moon Knight. In the end, Imhotep slew the invading Brood Queen and thwarted their attempt to take a foothold on Earth. It was actually in the wake of that battle that Imhotep founded the Brotherhood of the Shield, the legacy of which would eventually lead to the foundation of the 20th century counter-terrorism agency, SHIELD. The next known Brood sighting on Earth was in Britain in the late 5th century, when a pair of drones attacked a young Arthur Pendragon. Fortunately, the future king was rescued by the thunder god Thor, who thwarted the would-be infestation by exterminating the drones before hunting down their queen. Of course, there are also examples of Brood activity in space, like when the Kree Admiral Devros and his crew were attacked and infected shortly before the Marvel Age of Heroes. The Admiral was fascinated by what he witnessed, and upon meeting the Queen of the Hive that attacked him, Devros was implanted with a royal embryo. As his body began to metamorphosize, Devros regarded himself as a Brood king, believing that he had transcended Kree evolution by becoming a synthesis of blue Kree military faculty and Brood physical prowess. Oh, for those unfamiliar, most Kree either have blue or pink skin, with blue Kree like Devros commonly being prejudiced against their pink-skinned compatriots due to the widespread but ultimately dubious belief that pink Kree were solely the product of interbreeding with other species, thus making blue Kree more pure-blooded. As such, Devros intended on luring in others with a distress call so that he could infect more blues like himself with royal Brood embryos while converting pink Kree into simple drones. Of course, he was fairly oblivious to the fact that all this would ultimately accomplish was the propagation of more Brood, who were unconcerned with the color of their hosts. In any event, his schemes were thwarted by Captain Mar-Vell, himself a pink-skinned Kree, who killed the Brood Queen Devros had partnered with before ultimately slaying the racist Admiral with his bare hands. Mar-Vell was also infected with a royal egg, but was saved when his ally, Medic Una, used a modified Omniwave projector to destroy the embryo before it did any irreversible damage. Sometime after that, the Brood forged an alliance with the rogue Shi'ar warrior Deathbird. This led to what would be the first of many clashes between the Brood and the Uncanny X-Men, as well as the first known appearance of the Brood in the Marvel Age. During this time, Deathbird sought to seize control of the Shi'ar Empire from her sister, Lilandra, but we already talked about that in my video on Deathbird herself. The important thing for today is that Lilandra was allies with the likes of the X-Men and the Starjammers, both of whom became long-standing enemies of the Brood. Wolverine in particular would earn their ire after killing the Brood warrior prime, Skirkle, who on a meta note was actually the first Brood ever seen by readers in Uncanny X-Men number 155 in 1982. Anyway, Deathbird's schemes were thwarted, but the Brood soon returned, led by the Great Mother, who abducted the X-Men and trapped them in an illusion while implanting them with Brood eggs. Wolverine awakened first, but his adamantium skeleton prevented his metamorphosis from progressing, while his healing factor destroyed the embryo within him. The Brood also abducted the X-Men's ally, the Kree-human hybrid Carol Danvers, and used her to perform genetic experiments. Now, I will note that this was during the point in time in which Danvers had previously operated as the superhuman hero Ms. Marvel, but lost her abilities when they were completely drained by Rogue. Anyway, Carol was ultimately rescued by Wolverine, and the two reunited with the other captured X-Men, fighting their way to freedom. Furthermore, the Brood experiments on Danvers' unique biology triggered her transformation into an even more powerful superhuman form, which she then dubbed Binary. Meanwhile, the eggs within the X-Men continued to gestate, with Storm being the first one to begin transforming. However, a strong burst of solar energy from the galactic core forced the embryo back into remission, temporarily reverting the physical change. Unwilling to let herself turn again, Storm threw herself into the vacuum of space, sacrificing her life to kill the embryo. But then she was found and revived by an infant Acanti, one who was destined to carry their people's racial soul and become the next prophet singer. Agreeing to help free the soul from the corpse of its previous bearer, Lilandra and the X-Men launched an attack on the Brood's throne city on Sleaze World. It was during this assault that Kitty Pryde, aka Sprite, aka Shadowcat, first found and befriended a dragon-like alien that she subsequently named Lockheed. In the end, Carol Danvers, as Binary, succeeded in using her energy channeling abilities to free the Acanti soul from the remains of the previous prophet singer and sent it into the new one, thus ending the Acanti's species-wide enslavement. The cosmic energy released by the Acanti soul also purged the embryos gestating within the X-Men and even crystallized the Great Mother, seemingly killing her. At the same time, during this whole battle, a group of 6 Brood Warriors Prime had been dispatched to confront the X-Men, but came upon an even larger and more fearsome creature that swallowed them whole. Then, when Binary unleashed the Acanti soul energy that crystallized the Brood Queen, it also penetrated deep inside the planet, destabilizing and destroying Brood World. Binary and the X-Men were teleported to safety by the Starjammers, while the beast that swallowed the Warriors Prime was crystallized as well and flung into space when the planet exploded. Meanwhile, based on something the Queen said before she died, Wolverine quickly deduced that there was one more egg to deal with, a royal embryo that had been secretly implanted within Professor Charles Xavier. While the X-Men were busy battling the Brood in space, Xavier had been assembling a new team of teenagers dubbed the New Mutants, unaware that he was being subconsciously influenced by the Brood's desire to find hosts for its young. The X-Men returned to Earth before the New Mutants could be infected, but were too late to prevent Xavier's transformation into a Brood Queen. But unlike most Brood hosts, Xavier's powerful psionic consciousness was able to survive this transformation and continue resisting from within. As a result, the Starjammers medic, Sikorsky, was able to create a cloned body that Xavier could transfer his mind into, effectively restoring him to normal. Seeking revenge, the Brood then sent a single dwarf queen to Earth within an enslaved star shark. Among those who witnessed the crashing shark and went to investigate were a paramedic from the Denver Fire Department, Harry Palmer. While the others were quickly killed, Harry was infected with a royal embryo that dominated his willpower, forcing him to seek out and infect human mutants in an attempt to create superpowered Brood drones. He infected a total of 8 mutants: Blindside, Brickbat, Dive Bomber, Lockup, Spitball, Temptress, Attention and Whip Hand, who ambushed and attacked the X-Men. The X-Men were ultimately victorious but had no way to restore Palmer or the infected mutants to normal, and were forced to kill them to eliminate the risk of a larger outbreak. However, nobody realized that Palmer's partner, Josie Thomas, had already been infected, or that she, in turn, infected a woman named Hannah Conover, the wife of a pro-mutant Reverend William Conover. Now, unlike most Brood hosts, Hannah was immediately aware of her infection, and the fact that she had been marked as a potential queen. We'll come back to that in a moment, but in the meantime, there was another incident in which the Brood infected members of the Assassin's Guild in New Orleans. In this invasion, they briefly succeeded in gaining control over the supernatural vigilante Ghost Rider, but fortunately he was cured by the X-Man Psylocke and the assassin Belladonna Boudreaux, who psionically separated him from the embryo and destroyed it before its infection became permanent. The Rider then joined forces with the X-Men to stomp out that particular Brood invasion. Meanwhile, the previously mentioned Hannah Conover, having been implanted with a queen embryo, was compelled to find others to infect. Using her husband's congregation, she did just that under the pretense of faith healing. However, through some strange quirk, the Brood created by Hannah Conover were loyal only to her, seemingly unconnected to the larger caste system. At night, the Brood Empress attempted to telepathically communicate with her, but Hannah's mind was still mostly human, and so she couldn't understand who or what was talking to her. In her confusion, she came to believe that it was Jesus Christ who was trying to reach her, and her religious faith inspired her to fight against the influence of the Brood Queen within her. The Empress, meanwhile, dispatched a squad of Firstborn to eliminate Conover's rogue Hive, including the one that infected her in the first place, Josie Thomas. Naturally, that whole situation led to another confrontation between the X-Men and the Brood. While her broodlings were slaughtered by the Firstborn, Hannah allowed herself to be taken by the X-Men and placed into cryogenic stasis, severing her connection with the Brood Collective and allowing the mutants to further study Brood biology. Over the following years, there were many more instances of Brood activity, not all of which we can cover in detail today. In the intervening years, while they no longer had the entire species under their proverbial thumb, the Brood continued to capture and enslave individual members of the Acanti race. During the events of Maximum Security, in which the Earth was set to become an intergalactic penal colony, the Brood tried to take advantage of the situation and establish a foothold on Earth, but were thwarted by Wolverine and an alien bounty hunter whose family had been infected by the Brood, Tyrus Krill. Sadly, Krill was also infected and began to transform, forcing Wolverine to kill him as well. Sometime after that, the Brood infiltrated a space station called the Simulacra as a prelude to a larger invasion. This time they were opposed by both the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and ultimately fled when Reed Richards and Emma Frost tricked the Brood into believing that the Earth was simultaneously being attacked by Galactus and the Phoenix. Meanwhile, the Crystal Beast containing the Brood Warriors Prime from Brood World eventually crashed on the planet Sakar. There, the Warriors Prime were forced to participate in deadly gladiatorial battles that killed all but one, which was labeled Brood Creature 2 of 6 by the Sakarans, but took to calling herself No Name. Disconnected from the Brood Hive after the death of her comrades, No Name ultimately became one of the Hulk's warbound during the Planet Hulk incident, and helped the Green Goliath overthrow Sakar's tyrannical ruler, the Red King. After that, during the events of World War Hulk, in which the Hulk returned to Earth with the warbound and sought revenge on those who'd exiled him into space, No Name attempted to make a nest for herself in the tunnels beneath New York City, but was opposed by a team of heroes for hire led by Misty Knight. The Brood did succeed in seducing and infecting a mercenary named Humbug, forcing his allies to euthanize him, but in the end No Name was sterilized by the heroes, preventing her from propagating further. There was also an incident in which the Brood Great Mother, having survived her crystallization at the hands of Binary, launched another attack on Earth, seeking to transform it into a new Brood homeworld. She was opposed once more by Carol Danvers, as well as an alien woman named Crew, whose planet had already been decimated by the Brood. While Crew was killed by the seemingly invulnerable Great Mother in the ensuing battle, Danvers ultimately used a thermonuclear device to launch the Brood Queen beyond the Earth's orbit, sending her careening into outer space. Sometime later, the X-Men encountered a mutant broodling with the ability to feel compassion. After his connection to the Brood hive mind was severed, this young broodling was brought back to Earth, where he became a student in the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, a mutant academy run by Wolverine. There, he took the name Brew and became a friend and ally to the X-Men. Meanwhile, the rest of the Brood continued to suffer losses that reduced their population until eventually it came time for a new Empress to arise, and the Brood were on the verge of nest war. Seeking to take advantage of the situation, a Kree accuser hired the Starjammers to retrieve the king egg from the Shi'ar, but before they could do so, the egg was stolen by the new mutants who brought it back to Earth without even realizing what it was. Once he took notice of this, Brew warned that without proper containment, a king egg would draw countless Brood directly to it. Sure enough, a large invasion soon followed, and a team of X-Men scrambled to take the egg off planet. The Brood invasion force followed with an armada of enslaved Acanti, forcing the X-Men and their allies to crash land on an alien planet. What followed was a frenzied attempt by the X-Men, the Starjammers, and the Shi'ar Imperial Guard to keep the egg away from the marauding Brood. Out of both time and options, Brew broke open and consumed the king egg, making him the first real Brood king. Seizing control of the entire hive, he halted the assault, for once allowing his people to exist peacefully in the universe. However, it should be noted that the effects of the king egg are not permanent, as it's been estimated that a Brood king would maintain control for anywhere between 5 and 10 standard Kree cycles. Furthermore, if a second king egg were to be produced, the effects of the first one would be disrupted. In either case, while the Brood have been forced into a state of peaceful coexistence for now, it's only a matter of time before sentient life is threatened by their expansion once again. But until that happens, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me. Let me give a special shout out to all of my Patreon and Ko-fi supporters, Twitch subscribers, and YouTube members, all of which help make the channel possible. By signing up for any ongoing amount on any of these platforms, you'll get your name in these special thanks here, but Patreon is the one that helps determine what topics get covered on the channel via monthly polls. And as always, if there is anything in particular that you want me to talk about, be sure to let me know in the comments. But that is indeed all I have for you this week, and so until next time, true believers, Excelsior!